Welcome to episode 100. Woohoo! I got
Woohoo!
here my friend and mentor, Noé Morales.
How you doing, Yvonne? Thank you for having me here.
Amazing. Yeah, for sure. It, it's been a it's been a journey scheduling you in.
Yes, it has. It has been it's been difficult, but you know what? We're here now today, so I'm
Yeah,
really
yeah.
happy and excited and blessed to be, partaking in your famous podcast, to say the least. But
Yeah, famous.
amazing.
Can you let the listeners and audience know a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. But you know what? If it's okay with you, before I do, I just
Sure.
would like to acknowledge the land that I reside on, which is
Yeah, sure.
Calgary, right? If that's okay, I think it's always important. As a settler, right, I acknowledge the land. So Calgary is located on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprised of Siksika, Kainai, and Piikani, the Tsuut'ina Nation, and the Stoney Nakoda Nation, which comprise of Chiniki, Bear Spot, and Goodstoney as well. This land is also home to the Métis region, Métis Nation region of Alberta, Region 3. And I honor and respect the history, the languages, the cultures of the Indigenous people that lived here way before my time. And we're talking about thousands of years. So always want to pay respect to the land that I'm in. A little bit about myself. Okay, introduction. Oh, wow. Okay, Noé Morales. Noé is Spanish for Noah. Um, and I'll tell you a little bit how I use that to my advantage. Because my name, if you really read out my name, some people call me No Morals. But let's park that for a second. Let's park that for a second, and I'll tell you how I use that for my advantage. I'm a man of faith, first and foremost. I'm a father, I'm a brother, cousin, you name it. Officially the best uncle ever. I got that title a few years ago. I have two beautiful children, Noah and Sophia. And what else? I'm married to my lovely, supportive, best friend, wife, Vicky. She's awesome. I was born in Nicaragua, which is in Central America, which is the land of lakes and volcanoes, as they say. Yeah, so that's who I am.
And dance and music.
And dancing and music for sure. Yeah, yeah.
Amazing. So let's go back to memory lane bit of time traveling. Tell
Time
us about
traveling. Okay.
your childhood. How was that?
Oh wow. Do you have all day? So if you do, okay, let's get started.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so no. I come from a very humble, hardworking family, right? Both my parents, they come from a family of farmers, landowners. To this day, successful farmers and landowners back home. So yeah, very humbling beginnings for sure. Um, Both of my parents married at a very young age, and then moved to the city for growth, right? More opportunities and things like that. Um, they got married very young. They pursued their careers at a very young age too, and started to build a family at a very young age. Um, I come from a family of 9 other siblings, so there's 10 of us in our family. And I don't know if you knew that. I think you did, kind of, sort of, but yeah, there's 10 of us. So there's 5 sisters and 5 brothers. Um, yeah, so busy household for sure for my parents. Um, we were taught at a very young age about our faith, right? Our faith in God,
Yep.
values like, not just faith, but also family, things like, respecting and caring for others and things like that. And of course, my parents always taught us to share those values in any chance or any opportunity we had to when meeting new people, right? Be it in the community or at work or whatever the case may be. So yeah, so memory lane. So going back to my childhood, I don't really remember much about my childhood well in Nicaragua. Even though I was born there, we moved to the U.S. at a very young age. Better opportunities. My dad was
Yeah.
always looking for not better work, just better opportunity for all of us. There's 10 kids, right? So imagine that, right? So yeah, but yeah, my childhood was always, it was, I find it was always full of laughter, cries, right? Just like any other typical family, toys being stolen from each other, or throwing things across the room, just like any typical family. But I think the best memory is when my parents, um, picked a day in the week just for us to be together and enjoy life. So when we lived in Miami, Florida, after church, we would go to the beach, and we'd be there from like noon all the way to the evening, right? So that was, to me, that was the best thing ever, experienced as a young boy. Um, yeah, and I mean, when I couldn't find friends at school, guess who were my friends? My brothers and sisters, right? So that
Yeah.
was kind of like a plus for me,
Yeah.
when I was little. Yeah, what else?
What were
What?
like the some of the like the hard times?
Oh, well, as a young boy, the hard times. Okay, so I'll tell you this. Look, my parents were very heavily involved in church, right? So they helped newcomers and so on and so forth. They always offered their house to help people, be it new to the country, back home, or even like in North America, right? And I guess for me, I didn't understand that at that point because I'm like 4 or 5 years old, that I can
Yeah.
remember, 6 years old, right? And my parents would take my toys, my little brother's toys, and give it to other kids that would that would stay at our house for a little bit. And I'm like, what the heck, what's going on here? These are my toys, right? So to me that was rough. But now that I'm older, and as I grew up, I knew that it was not about me, or it's not about the toys or whatever. It was in fact about serving others, right? So I think, being from a big family like mine, we were always taught to serve others. Hence, that's where the belief comes into my life, right? Where, at a very young age, my parents, taught me about God and faith, and we went to church and things like that. And I think that helped me shape the person that I am today. Um, I feel like that kind of resonates to me a lot. Being taught those values day in, day out, right?
And how was like the journey throughout like college, schooling? How was that for you?
Funny, interestingly enough, I'm an introvert, like
Really?
naturally. Yeah, I am. It's hard for me to be. I guess I can switch back and forth, but I find myself a little bit shy, to be honest with you. But growing up, I had a stutter. I grew up with a stutter, and I don't know what I was from, but that was tough. Especially in elementary or even in junior high, right? Like total different level from elementary. Um, I remember being in class, and either be it math or be it social studies or whatever, and those are subjects that really interest me. And when the teacher asked question, I used to be shy because I knew I would stutter, and would feel like different, right? Um, so I tried to be part of class, and kids, of course, how it is, right? Would make fun of my speech and all that stuff, and so that was tough. That was tough at school,
Bullying?
for that. Yeah, almost to the point of being bullied. But guess what? Guess what? I'll tell you a story. I remember one kid. I think it was in grade 3 or grade 4, back in Miami. Um, he used to pick on me because he knew I had this speech thing, right? This
Yeah,
stutter,
yeah,
and so he knew who to pick on, and he used to pick on my lunch all the time, and at that time, my parents used to give us $1 each.
yeah.
And to us, $1 was a lot of money back then. We're talking about, I'm not going to age myself, but we're talking,
Yeah.
talking about early 80s, right? It was a lot of money. And, you would go to the, what is it, the canteen, or like the
Yeah, yeah.
concession at school or whatever, and you would buy, chips or
Mm.
whatever, gum. So this kid, every day, Monday to Fridays, bro, Monday to Fridays, he would pick on me and, hey, give me $1 or I'll punch you, whatever. And the first time, like, no, 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 no. And he punched me and got, whatever, and took my money and did the same thing day after day after day, until one day I was walking home with my sister. So in my family, there's 10 of us, right? But
Yeah.
the last four are, let's say, the youngest, obviously, right? So we're,
Yeah.
we're more connected than the older ones, because the older ones grew up in Nicaragua, right? And in Miami, and they went to school together. The last four of us, right? We grew up in North America,
Depende.
so totally
Oh, okay.
different dynamics. See what I'm saying? So we're walking home, and my sister, who is 2 years older than me, says, "Hey, what's going on? What's why are you so quiet? And why is your face red? Like my cheek was red, right? Kind of purple, whatever, bruised. I'm like, oh, it's, and I told her the whole story, and I was just sobbing, told her the story. And I remember she said, hey, you have a big sister. Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it tomorrow. And I couldn't sleep, Yvonne. Like, I'm like, oh my God, what's going on? My sister's going to create this huge mess for me. It's going to be worse, et cetera, et cetera. Woke up the next morning and Mom, I feel sick. No, you're going to school. You need to go to school, blah, blah, blah. Right. And my sister, Maria, she's like, nope, we're going to school. And she came up with a plan. She's like, hey, I'm going to hide around the corner here. When this kid at lunchtime comes at you again, which he will, I promise I will be here to help
Ambush.
him. And he will stop, right? Okay. Sure enough, the kid comes up and he's about to just, punch me, hurt me, right? For the dollar, right? And dude, I'm telling you, my sister comes out of the corner. It was kind of like a movie, bro. Like, she comes out of the corner, right? Like, with that music sound of like a superhero coming into the scene, right? And this kid was about to hurt me, and she grabs his arm and spins him around and just slaps him in the butt. Never again. In fact, a few weeks later, this kid became my best friend. So that was cool. That's cool. So what am I saying? So those were the things that I saw as a young boy, right? Growing up with my speech or with my stuttering. But my mom was super good, man. And I think most of us can say that about our moms, right? Or parents or siblings or whoever, or family, right? In general. I remember, man, she never gave up on me, and she took me to different doctors and clinics and therapy sessions. And to this day, I'm so glad that, she helped me go through that. So in essence, my answer to your question is, yeah, there were some stumblings for sure. And of course, right, kids that may have a visible accessibility need or whatever may be picked on and so on and so forth. But there's always options. And I was lucky and blessed to have my sister plus another, 9 other siblings or 8 other siblings that could help out, right? So that's my childhood as a boy, right?
Oh my, that's good. That's amazing. And how was like becoming an extrovert, or like from an introvert? How was that journey for you?
It's been hard. One of the things, again, being part of a big family, as I grew up, there was the switch for competition was always
Oh
on,
yeah, to get
in a
your
good
voice.
way. Don't get me wrong, in a good way.
I know, but like to get
You know what I'm
attention.
saying? Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah. So the competition switch was always on. I always wanted to, be like my older brothers all the time. Specifically, one brother, which I love all my siblings. I really do, equally, right? But there was one brother who was super cool, man, and I wanted to be like him. So of course, right. I always tried my best to dress like him, to talk like him, to do my hair like him, all that stuff, right? So growing up, I think that's one thing about big families, right? That competition, that switch was always on. Sorry, what was the question? Sorry, Yvonne. Oh, the introvert extrovert. So I had, my older brothers and sisters, cheering for me all the time, be it at school, sports, church, wherever, community events, whatever. They always had that. We always had the spirit of cheering each other on, and that made me feel a bit more comfortable. And I remember, how I became an extrovert is watching my dad. So my dad used to preach at church. He used to be a pastor. He used to preach at church, and he was one of those preachers that didn't just read the Bible and and the sermon and boom, go home. He was very vivid in his explanations, and he created this visual way of preaching and sharing the word and things like that, the Bible stuff, right? And it captivated me. And I think watching him at a very young age, and then my other brother, my oldest brother, who became a pastor, right? He followed my dad's footsteps and whatnot. Watching him, and then in fact, my little brother Moses, my little brother, he actually got me into leadership, learning about being a leader and serving
Oh wow.
others, with empathy and things like that, right? So in fact, from him, I learned how to be more open, and just go for it and risk it, right? So I think it's back and forth. I go back and forth sometimes, but naturally, yeah, you'll see me in a corner.
Do you get like drained if you spend too much with people, or is that
No,
different for you? Like,
it's not that I get drained. I always have that fear of like, oh, what if I start stuttering, or like, even though I don't. Sometimes when I get really excited, I do, but just like any other person, right? You get that fear. But once I'm in front of a crowd and I feel comfortable, I'm good, right? So I'll tell you what. So earlier I told you about my name, right? Noé Morales, right? So if you are not familiar with the Spanish language, you would not know how to pronounce my name. So of course, Noé is not a common name like Mike or Justin, right? It's not common here in North America. So um, I use an icebreaker, and when I go in front of crowds, I say, "Hey, my name is Noé Morales. You may be thinking of saying no morals. I promise, I do have morals." And people laugh, right? Like, and that's what breaks the ice for me. It
mm,
makes it easier, right?
yeah. And like you saw your brother, little brother, and big brother helped you in a way to shape some of your values and
Totally,
your parents.
totally. And you want to know a fun fact about my family? Um, so between the older brother and my youngest brother, there's they're 20 years apart. And then
Oh, oh.
and then there's roughly, if you want to get into the math, right? Roughly we're like 2.22 years apart each other, right? So
Wow.
we're 2.22 years difference in ages between everyone, right? So that's kind of cool, right?
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. I think I am the one person in the whole siblings that likes to prank a lot, or just make everybody laugh. And I think that's cool because, um, you know, I think that helps me every day to find a purpose. Not to prank people, but I mean a purpose for life, to laugh, right? To get people get people thinking and going, right? I think that's wonderful. You asked me another question, so I shared a little story about, um, as a boy and having stuttering, getting picked on, et cetera, and then having my sister protect me and things like that. Um, when we came to Canada, my dad, 3 months into the country, my dad unfortunately he got hit by a car. He was crossing the street. He had the right of way to cross the street, but somebody, you know, hit him. Right? It was an accident. And bro, let me tell you, that was tough. Me being
Yeah.
very little in Canada, I think at that age I was potentially 8 or 9, right? At that time, oh, 10 maybe. Either way, that was heartbreaking. You're new to this country. You see your parents as your, not just your protectors, but they they supply everything for you, right? They think you're everything. So my dad gets into this accident. Of course, we're like devastated. We're new to this country. We're foreigners to this land, really, right? If you look at it that way. So that was hard, but I think, you know growing up and having faith, growing up with a close knit family who's always together. We help each other in times of need and things like that. I think that was something that helped my whole family. Number one, stay together, obviously, but number two, just just confront this huge storm that we were facing, right? And I think if my dad and everybody else didn't have the faith that they have in God, and the beliefs, I think, it wouldn't be a good thing. But yeah, so a little bit of my childhood challenges, but also as I grew up and all that stuff, I think I saw good examples in my parents, regardless of the situation. My dad never gave up, right? And things like that. So
Yeah, amazing. Amazing. Amazing story. And yeah, some of the challenges and struggles growing up. It's fun,
yeah,
but
for
like
sure.
also, yeah.
Yeah.
And in your own words, what would you say being limitless is?
Mm. That's a tough one. Wow. Okay, so being limitless, what does it mean? Okay, I can easily say, Yvonne, you got me on this one. I can easily say being limitless would be something, oh, sky's the limit. Open the door for opportunities. But maybe I'll explain it in a faith based perspective. If that's okay with you.
Yeah, of course.
So the Bible encourages believers like me, right, to overcome negative self talk and limiting beliefs. Right. So really,
The Bible does
it's
that. Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
I
yeah,
knew
yeah,
from
yeah,
you.
it does, and it urges myself, it urges me, or believers to think bigger than what you can imagine, right? And basically trust God's promises. So what do I mean by that? And I'm not preaching. I'm giving you my perspective. Okay. So what does that mean? So there's a verse that I really love in the Bible. It says, it's in Luke 137. It says, "For nothing will be impossible with God." So what does that mean? Oh my goodness. For nothing will be impossible with God, right? Well, limitless to me is if I have a strong faith and I know that God will provide some way or another, and that He's a big God and He's everywhere, and He's this powerful God. Well, you know what? I need to trust that nothing is impossible. So limitless to me is having faith that nothing is impossible to achieve, to reach, to help others, reach a different level, to push them. And I think, um, basing it on that, for me, that's what limitless is. Does that make sense? What I'm
Yes,
saying?
it does. It does.
Yeah,
It does. Thank you so
yeah.
much for your time and coming on and sharing your story. It was a delight.
I appreciate you, Yvonne. I hope that you continue to do this podcast. I'm a big fan of it.
I know.
Apologies for
Yeah,
having so much schedule conflicts, but happy to be here. I hope that the audience took something from this, and I wish you nothing but the best. I know you're working on some great stuff happening in the future for you. Hey, I'm a fan, so keep going. Don't give up, little by little, right? I'm sure that all your dreams and all your goals will be accomplished, just as long as you have that momentum, right? And don't give
have
up
faith.
and have faith. There you go. You got it. Awesome.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
All right. Take care.